All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the Techlandia Design Sprint. Over the past week, we've engaged over 40 people from around the state and including high school students, which was pretty cool to see last week, to CEOs, all focused on solving challenges related to food security, child health and wellness, and of course, the digital divide. Before we get into the main event, I'd like to note that this session is also being recorded and will be found on TAO's YouTube channel within 24 hours of this event. If you prefer your pitch not to be recorded, please send a direct message to TAO admin so we can stop recording. And in terms of some lessons learned for this week, necessity really does drive innovation. We can do design sprints virtually. We can engage diverse individuals statewide. And we're asking everyone to think through equity and inclusion in regards to each challenge, sparking interesting conversations as well as some interesting design elements as well. And this program would not have been made possible without the support of our sponsors, of course, which included AT&T, Google, and the Portland Trailblazers. I'd now like to introduce George Granger, who's the president of AT&T for Oregon, to say a few words. George?
Hey, Skip, thank you very much. I'll be brief. I just really wanted to thank everyone who was involved in this project. It was truly an amazing event considering how smoothly you pivoted from what we normally do into this new reality. You did a terrific job, and everybody who's been involved in it got really positive feedback, so thank you for that. I thought the week of conferences were terrific, and I'm really looking forward to hearing some more about the solutions that have been offered, and just conclude by saying how much AT&T appreciates being a part of this, and we look forward to continuing to work with you on projects like this in the future. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, George. So next up, we have Kara Snow, who's the Chief Community Engagement Officer at TAO, and she's going to recap the week and introduce the judges. Kara, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm also going to do that thing that eats up time, but I love doing because I just feel like we all need to say a quick little hello. So it's literally like turning on your camera, giving a wave, and saying hi. I'm going to call out people's names. So you've got me. Hi, Kara Snow. Our TAO host, Extreme, Justin Martinez. Give us a hi and a wave. I don't know if he's hiing or waving. I'm about to introduce Sandy. Sandy, give us a hi and a wave. Catherine.
Hey, I have a bunch of dirty laundry behind me, so I'm just going to say hi and not turn on.
I love the candor. Eric Miller. Kelly.
Hello.
Fantastic. Mark.
Hello there.
Emily Fowler.
Hi, everyone.
Casey Black.
Hey, everyone.
Alexander, I can't say your last name, but it starts with an A.
Altasking. Hi, everyone.
All right. Let's see if I can get it right. Ishan Sinha?
Yeah, it's Ishan Sinha.
Ishan Sinha. Glad you're here.
Nice to meet you.
Mark Davis.
Yo.
Christine O'Keefe. Oh, I was giggling. Christine, are you out there? Maybe yes, maybe no. Shosh Watt. I hope I got that correct.
Yeah, you were right. Hello, everyone.
Awesome. Jim Couples.
Good afternoon, Tom.
Mark Berdnarski.
Morning.
Chelsea Spangler. George already went. Cody Brown.
Hello.
Oh, there's Christine. Hey, Christine.
Hi.
Claude Goodman.
Hey, all.
Oh, Brianne, you're one of our judges, but say hey and wave. Okay, I'm not sure who.
I'm on mute, sorry. Hello.
This is also the challenge with this going off script. Okay, I'm not sure who ECCMB is, but we want to hear you say hi. Maybe it's Ellen?
Oh, it's Ellen Cumber. Hi.
So I thought, I was like, hey, Ellen.
Hey.
I was like, I actually recognize that. Eduardo.
Hi, everyone.
Lee Coates.
Hi. Good to see everybody.
Jenna.
Hey, everyone.
Danny.
Hi.
William.
Hi, guys.
William's, I think, our high school team leader. Sean Irvine, what a treat.
Hello, hello.
iPhone Eva, I like that. And then Tabitha, I'm about to introduce you. Tabitha, say hi if you feel like going and doing that before I introduce you.
Howdy. Hello.
Fantastic. Wow, here's what's magical about what just happened. On my fancy script, it says 2:08, and we are there. So perfect, and we all got to say hello, which I think is important before we start doing these things. So what happened during the week? It was really exciting, and it was super inspiring. We have a lot of folks interested in agriculture in Oregon, like a lot. So be prepared for some data hub pitches. That part was really interesting to me. We didn't have any takers on the one-stop caregiver app, so that's not going to be part of our pitchback this afternoon. We will see it again in the future. I have to say the office hours provided a glimpse into the design process, and I appreciated all of our challengers that took the time to participate. They're also our judges, so they have gone above and beyond in terms of supporting this event over the course of the last week. And that investment of your time is super helpful to our design sprinters to be able to hear directly from client-facing experts. So that was all just really impressive and inspiring to me. So I'm now going to introduce the judges. We have 2 judges that are going to judge all of our applications, and that is Sandy Verma, Regional Vice President, Global IoT Solutions and Strategy at AT&T. Sandy, we already heard you say hello once, but say hello.
Hey guys, glad to be here.
Sandy got so excited about this that we roped him in, I don't know, like 48 hours ago. And then Brianne Howard from Google, we are really excited that you're here. Say hello again, please.
Thank you guys. I can't wait to see what you all have in store. Thanks for letting me participate.
And Bree is really interesting. So in addition to working for Google, she has an ag degree. So her expertise is quite varied and will be very much appreciated. And then as we go through each specific challenge, we are going to have Catherine Helms, the Chief Data Officer, State of Oregon, judge the Agricultural Data Hub Challenge. So Catherine, we know you're out there. You want to say hi one more time?
Hi folks, I just wanted to say I'm really excited and I can't wait. I know that there are like a million teams for the Agricultural Data Hub, so I'm really excited to see all of the pitches.
Claude Goodman is President, Biomedical Engineer, and I'm going to see if I can get this word right. Geron Technologist, and he is with CareWheels Corporation for the CareWheels app. Claude, one more time with a hello.
One more time, hello, Geron Technologist. You got it right on, Kara. Thank you.
Yes, they did it. And then Tabitha, did I go past you? I think I did. Tabitha Jensen, Deputy Director, New Avenues for Youth for the Safe Places for Youth app.
Hi there. Thanks everyone for all their hard work. I'm excited to see what you got.
This is pretty awesome. Okay, so as a reminder, the solutions are judged on the following criteria that are all specific to the business and the intent of the challenge. So ROI, so the return on investment, aesthetics, usability, technology, functionality, accomplishment, and equity outcome, and the presentation style. And that is why we have such a robust panel of judges, because we have both the technologists, from a software and a hardware perspective. We have an ag overlay, we have a state perspective, and then we have our community-based organizations that work day in and day out with the end users of these potential solutions. So they're going to do a great job. Between presentation, Q&A, and feedback, each team is going to have approximately 15 minutes. You do not have to take all of those minutes. We just wanted to make sure we had some time built in because we feel like this is an opportunity to work together as a community to come up with solutions. So if you have a question about something that is pitched and you are not a judge, please feel free to go ahead and ask, and we'll make this more of a conversation. So with that, are you ready to rumble? I wish we had music. So we're going to start with the statewide Ag Data Hub. And I should have shared with you all the order that we had selected. But so here it is. So our presenting order is going to be Squishy Media. Eric, I feel like you were aware of that, so that wasn't a total shock. And then we'll go with CERT, Rennet Consulting, and Terrapin. And I will serve as a timekeeper. And the way that we have set up the share is that multiple folks can share at one time. So we think it's easier for you all to run your slides for a more seamless presentation. And I think that's it. Same comment as earlier that Skip made. If you prefer that your presentation not be recorded and or published on our public-facing YouTube channel, just shoot me a note and we'll make sure to stop the recording. And outside of that, I'm now officially ahead of the script schedule. So we will go ahead and hand it over to the Squishy Media team.
Awesome, thank you. All right, let's see. So how do I switch over to projecting here?
You got it? The share on the bottom, you should be able to take it. And we can see it.
That look good to everybody? Yeah, you're able to see it?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. All right, well, thank you. Just a brief, little bit of context. So we were really excited to jump in on this data hub for Oregon agriculture based on a lot of projects we've done in the past. And one of the first things that we were doing as a team was trying to wrap our head around the bigger challenge to make sure that the context of whatever we were talking about made sense. So that's a lot about what this is. It's about context and a little bit of process. So I'm going to talk through a little bit about sort of our point of view on the data hub and start talking a little bit about how, as a community, we can all be approaching some of the challenges that have been identified in the sprints. So just for a little bit of quick context, we're a local web development firm specializing in a lot of work for state and federal government. We do a lot of data management projects, and we are what we call a lowercase agile firm. We don't rigidly follow the methodology, but we pull a lot from the agile software development methodology. And our particular context for this challenge, we are about to start a project that's being funded by USDA and USAID for pesticide data management with a team from OSU. So that's something that we are getting ready to do, and that was sort of our frame of reference for approaching the data hub challenge, because we were looking at the data ecosystem as a whole from the point of view of what does pesticide data look like as it's making its way through the ecosystem, essentially. All right. So when we look at it at a high level, this is the conversation we were having internally. There's a lot of different priorities in the community. There's a lot of different stakeholders. There's a lot of different incentives involved. Money is very much a factor. And these conversations were shaping everything that we were discussing. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is how we can more methodically look at the people and organizations involved as part of the technical problem solving process. And incidentally, this presentation's already been shared with TAO, and I'm assuming that in addition to the recording, if anybody wants to share the Google Slides, they're more than welcome to look at these later. So we wanted to talk a little bit about a roadmap for the project. So instead of a specific embodiment of what the data hub is, how we would approach building the data hub and how you would do the engagement with the various stakeholders. Talk a little bit about the agile or user-centered design processes that could be employed to design and build such a system. So we saw a lot of great things in previous sprints. The discussions and the open office hours were fantastic. And then the immediate thing our team was doing is, okay, how does this break down into actionable activities? So that's a little bit of what we're going to look at here in what we're talking about. And then we want to talk about how that fits into an agile process so that everybody can have the same shared frame of reference to understand about what needs to be done. So for those that aren't familiar with the Agile Manifesto, we certainly can't take credit for this. It's been around for a long time, but it is a way of approaching big, hairy, complicated problems in software development in a way that is more manageable and is more aligned with the day-to-day needs of a lot of individuals. We'll call them stakeholders for the sake of this discussion, but it really tries to work backwards from user needs, and it really prioritizes running software over specifications. But as I can attest, and I'm sure many others on this call can attest, public sector work doesn't have the luxury of just going out and standing up new systems with an MVP and sending all the things with regulatory compliance or legal requirements. You can't just shove that to the side and say software takes precedence. You have to follow all of the requirements that come along with being a public sector data ecosystem, whether that's applications that have to have Section 508 accessibility compliance or applications that are required to be compliant with, on the federal side, the FedRAMP compliance standards for data management, all of these things that don't necessarily come up in private sector software development. So to the extent that you can do agile, but acknowledge the realities of public sector development, you want to maintain that flexibility that Agile gives you, but you still have to follow the rules that the public sector is going to impose on a project, which come from very reasonable requirements as far as making sure sites are accessible to people, making sure the language that's used is intelligible to the audience that you're addressing. So all of those things are important. So some of these questions are ones that we were asking internally, and I'm sure folks on this call were also asking. Who consumes this data? Who produces this data? Who is impacted by this data? Who manages it? There are lots of different stakeholders that are either producing, consuming, or interacting with this data at some point. We want to know who they are. We want to have a clear idea of the high-level families, for lack of a better word, of stakeholders that are involved in the complete ecosystem of how this data is getting exchanged. Then we want to understand what their interactions are. This isn't just because we want to have a user story that can drive the technical development. It also, in my experience, does tremendous good to encourage buy-in. We want to understand the incentives of a grower. We want to understand the incentives and motivations of a trade association rep. We really want to understand what drives the equipment manufacturers in the way that they are collecting and managing data. And there's a methodology for how we organize this information in the form of user stories. We want to know who the user is, what their needs are, and what their objectives are. and we can't shy away from problems. We need to understand what people's incentives are so that we can address those head on. We can't avoid the fact that some people are going to want to share their data and other people are not. And they have good reasons why they may or may not want to do that. So we need to have a shared understanding of that. In the Agile process, and I'm just going to power through some of these quickly to make room for more folks, there is a specific methodology for going through and documenting what people, their motivations are, what they want to do, and what their goals are. And in this specific case with the data hub, there are additional needs. We want to have a clear idea of what the data sources are. We want to talk about whether or not there should be interoperability standards for them. We need to have a clear idea of what the applicable regulatory requirements are. In our space, when we're talking about pesticides, that's highly regulated, from the data sources to the labels, to the EPA requirements, to the actual organic requirements. All of those things are factors. So we want to do that. We also want to make sure that we are aware of the risks. Sometimes these projects do not succeed, and in my experience, it's because some stakeholders' requirements or incentives were not taken into account, and then they do not have an incentive to support the effort. So you have to get the buy-in. So once you get that buy-in, that gives you a lot more traction in moving forward into not only getting the support from the community, but being able to break it down into specific project activities. So that's what I really want to emphasize, that having some sort of governance process sitting on top of the Ag Data Hub is going to give everybody a shared understanding of what needs to be done. It gives a shared roadmap for the priorities. It engages with the end users and encourages them to have an incentive to support the project. And it will benefit greatly the state of Oregon and everybody that lives here and loves living here, because it will be of value to all of the different stakeholders. Thank you. Really appreciate everybody's time, and I hope this was useful.
Thanks, Eric. All right, this is where we hand it over to the judges. And Eric, you did a really good job with your timing, so thank you. And your deck was really well done.
Thank you.
So judges, any questions, comments, thoughts, things you'd like some clarification on?
Hey, Eric, Sandy here. Firstly, congratulations. This sounds like a really good initiative you guys are taking on. If I were to ask you, what is the one problem you're trying to solve for your stakeholders? Pick a stakeholder and just identify the problem statement if you can.
I would say that there is often, in my understanding, I'm not going to talk specifically to the Ag Data Hub. I'm just going to talk what we've experienced with a lot of our public sector data aggregation projects. There's often a misalignment between what the data is, why it's being collected, who's using it and for what purposes, and how it's managed. So you end up with these messy situations where data might be collected for a regulatory compliance purpose, but the actual use case for the data doesn't necessarily align with what the law says. We experienced this a few years ago with some education data for the state of Oregon. The state mandated requirement for data collection didn't neatly align with what end users in the general public needed from the data. So again, I think that comes back to the user stories requirement, that if you really understand at the outset what motivates people and what motivates the different parties to the data collection, you can make those subtle course corrections at the outset that say, like in the case of that education data, hey, let's also make sure that our data workflow includes these 3 pieces of information and they are managed in this way so we can also meet the use case that we've articulated for parents of K-12 students as opposed to those who are analyzing the regulatory required information that's being collected by legislative mandate. So that's kind of the thing. It's an alignment of people's incentives and the data ecosystem, and it requires careful thought. And that I find is always a huge challenge, but it's also really rewarding when you can find ways to make that Venn diagram overlap, basically.
Thank you, Eric. And a quick follow-up question to that is, let's say the data sits on AWS or Azure, or maybe you have another place you're going to have it sit. Who owns that data? And what is the security around it?
Yes, provenance and security is always a fun thing. I'll add versioning to that list. It always gets messy if you have a canonical data set that somebody is required to generate on a regular basis. And if you just plug an API onto it and then it's consumed by another app, well, they might have very different requirements for what version of that data set they're using at any given time. So yes, it does get messy with that. The cloud platforms seem to, in my experience, be pretty easily interoperable. We don't run into a whole lot of issues with that, but there is an ongoing issue in a lot of cases with who's really responsible for funding the care and feeding and maintenance and cleanliness of a data set. That's not something a lot of orgs either have the resource or the funding to do. So being clear about that up front. And then at a more technical level, what we find useful is using a lot of schemas, shared schemas like JSON schema for data specification management, so that you can clearly do apples to apples comparisons or integrations across data sets, so that you know that what you are defining as the overlap between multiple data sets is actually what you intended it to be, that you've had an explicit conversation articulating what these sets are and what their overlap is.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much, Eric.
Bray or Catherine, any questions for Eric and Squishy Media?
I'm curious. Oh, sorry, it's Catherine here. So it sounds like you have some experience kind of negotiating some of these hurdles from a government perspective. I'm curious if you've seen particular pitfalls when government tries to do Agile.
This isn't specific to any agency or any level of government. I just see it as being, in general, a little bit more challenging for a lot of public sector organizations, simply because they are serving many masters in terms of you have to meet legislative requirements, you have agency policies, you have best practices. Like at the federal level, it's not uncommon to have OMB say something and then an agency policy say something different. So reconciling that is always a challenge for the public sector. The Facebook move fast and break things motto does not work particularly well in the public sector. So unfortunately, sometimes that does end up where you see Agile being kind of wrapped into a larger, more traditional waterfall architecture. But I have seen that work if waterfall is defined broadly enough to let Agile work within it. So that's where it starts with the contracts, making sure that the contracts and the contracting officer are comfortable with Agile iterations, and sometimes approaching that with a don't ask for 10 million up front, ask for $500,000 up front, and then say that this is a $10 million project, but the state or the government is going to gatekeep at each $500,000. And then that gives them a level of comfort with iterative development sometimes. So there are some ways to get the work done in an Agile way within the constraints of a lot of public sector work.
Bree, did you have a question?
I do just have one question. I think this was asked a little bit earlier, but could you provide an example of one type of question that you are asking of this data, or that you anticipate that you would ask of this data?
To speak specifically to our use case where we're doing this pesticides work, deciding what pesticides are recommended for a particular pest control situation does require a fair amount of expertise, and it also does require local context, soil type, environmental conditions. That information is something that having consistent language about soil types is something that's useful. And there's various standards that we're aware of on that. The trick is it then boils down to a developer to really determine whether or not what they're getting from a USDA database is the same as what they're getting from an EU database as opposed to a state of Oregon database. So having more transparency in the data sets into what those different data types are for the developer is an ongoing challenge, but having that type of access into the data is something that I think is going to be increasingly important with these various data aggregation initiatives.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Eric. Anybody else? Any other questions that anyone in the audience wants to ask?
Sure, I'll ask a question. Pardon my naivete, but who are the primary beneficiaries of these data sets? And what's the ROI for those beneficiaries? Thank you.
I'd love to know that as well.
That is a question that I think remains to be answered as we're sort of going through this. I know that the perspective that we've kind of taken from the beginning, and I see Sean Irvine is out there from the City of Independence, was that this is really supposed to benefit the producers of ag in the state because it's such a critical industry, and there's a lot of opportunity to just provide better support. But I think we're still in the process of figuring that out. Anybody else? If not, I'm going to hand it over to the CERT team. Eric, thank you very much. I have an applause app, and it is highs or lows, and I think it can maybe hurt people's eardrums, so I'm going to refrain from it. But if you feel like giving applause, you can do it over in the participant panel with the little tiny hands that are clapping together. So, Eric, thank you. Great job to the Squishy Media team.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Who from CERT is going to step up and present?
I'll go. Hi, everyone. I'm William, and I'm from the South Asian Robotics team. I'm also here with Aiden, who's also a member on our team. We also have 3 other members on our team who unfortunately could not be here today. Aiden, oh, sorry, you said him, sorry. Andrew, Greg, and Devin, who contributed a lot to this project, but unfortunately weren't able to make it today. So a little bit about our team, I guess. So the South Asian Robotics team is a high school robotics team based out of South Asian High School. And we participate in a competition called the First Robotics Competition. And basically, in this competition, every year, we get a new game to play. And this game is like composed of various tasks and challenges. And we have 6 weeks to build a robot to do that. So most of our team has experience with robotics programming. But on the side, we like to attend events like this one and other like hackathons, where we can practice our web dev skills and contribute to the community. So I'd like to say a really big thank you to TAO, Kara and Catherine from the state of Oregon for just putting together this design sprint, and everyone involved who helped make this happen. It's really been a great opportunity for us, and we're really excited to show off what we've made so far. So I'm gonna start by sharing my screen. All right, can you guys see that? Should be a slide.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Sweet, okay. So we don't actually have a full slideshow deck, but it's mostly gonna be a live presentation. We're just gonna screen share our app and we'll just do a live walkthrough of it. But before we get started, I just wanna share this slide with you guys about kind of our initial thoughts behind the application and like the key components of what we wanted to do. Like what Eric was saying, in our initial discussions, we were talking about what kind of data do we need to be able to account for, or like how are the growers actually going to be using this data? So we didn't really know either. So we kind of made a few assumptions in order to build this app. And the first one we made is that growers are willing to share their data, and they're not really, there aren't. So sorry, let me back up a little bit. We did some background research into this field to see if there are any products on the market that help growers analyze their data. And we found quite a bit. There was a lot of stuff that dealt with like seeing how much water you received on the field or keeping track of like pesticides used. So a lot of stuff to help these growers analyze their data individually. But we didn't see a lot of stuff, a lot of applications that allowed these growers to share their data and compare what they had with other growers growing similar products. So that's really what we wanted to tackle with our project. And number two, the second big thing is we kind of realized early on that we didn't really know what data was going to be available. Like what kind of data do the growers have? And it's probably going to be different for each grower. And to kind of keeping this in mind, for our data entry system, we decided to go with a very flexible template-based data input system. So we have a bunch of data templates that are, so we have a bunch of unique data templates for each unique product. So say we have a product called salmon. And inside the salmon data template, we have several data fields. For example, the time of day when you caught the salmon, or how much salmon you caught. So each user can go through each one of these data fields and determine, hey, do I have data for that? If I do, okay, I might put it in. If I don't, well, I'll just keep moving on. And another thing with the data templates is they're fully customizable. So everyone on our team doesn't really have much experience with the agricultural sector. So we're like, oh, we can give our best guess to what data these growers will want to input, but we don't know for sure. So one cool feature, I think, that we have is we allow users to suggest new data fields. So say this user catches salmon, and we have a field for time of day. We have a field for the temperature of the water. But say maybe they want a different data field that's not on there. They can suggest that, and then we can add that very easily to the data template that's there to begin with. So that's kind of the overview of our project. I'm gonna switch screens now to the actual product, and I'm going to pass the baton to Aiden, who will take you guys through the landing page. Can you guys see this okay?
Yeah, we can see everything. This is great.
Oh, sweet, okay.
Okay, hi. I'm Aiden. Can you hear me?
We sure can, Aiden. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So we made a really simple landing page. Basically just, we didn't actually say anything. Obviously it's Latin. So we have a few options here. We can view our profile. We can upload data to the repository of data that we have available, and we can log in. We also can analyze the data with the view data button.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So we're just thinking of taking you guys through the process that a user, when they first see this website, how are they going to use this application? So the first thing they have to do is log in. So we have a login system right here. Oh, just a quick note. There's actually no backend to any of this. So it's all front end. We don't have the databases set up, but you can pretend that they're there. But basically, the the user, the first thing they have to do is make an account. And to make an account, they just have to put in their name, their email, and their password. And the email and password they're going to use to log in. They can also put in their affiliation, which is kind of like if they're associated with a farm or a company of some sort. They can put that in there for our records. So let's assume that this example user makes an account. They press submit, blah, blah, blah. To the login page, they log in. Okay, so they're logged in now. Pretend that that happened. The next thing they can do is they can upload their data. So we have all of our buttons up here on the nav bar. But normally this button would only show up if you're logged in. So we press the upload data button. And the first dropdown we have, oh, actually, let me send this off to Aiden to talk about this page.
Okay, so, right. So at first, when we're submitting data, we're going to need to choose a category. So we have a few pre-built categories. If we go like with fishing, I guess, then we can choose a product. We have a few products like salmon and trout. So let's salmon, I guess. And so now we have like a template based on salmon. So time of day, bait type, and yield in kilograms. So so we can submit whatever we want for these things.
And you can see we have multiple different templates,
right, we have
for each product. And these are all fully customizable. They're unique to the product. And for the user, if they're like, hey, I want an additional field, all they have to do is go over here to the suggest additional fields thing. And if they press the button, it's not implemented yet, but in the future, if they press the button, it'll take them to a page where they can submit a new field. Okay, so now that they've uploaded the data, what's next? And that takes us to the dashboard page, which is where all the data analytics happen. So for a user, they'll be able to choose a particular product from this dropdown, and it's searchable. So let's just do raspberry, since it came up first. And we render a bunch of these analysis cards. And you'll see for each card is rendered for each data field. So in the raspberry template, we've got two data fields, yield and fertilizer. So what this is doing is this is looking for all the data entries for a raspberry product. And it's displaying the distribution of that value across all of the entries in the database. So if you notice here, it says your yield value. So what does that mean? This means that the user has inputted their own data. So they said, okay, I planted 1 acre of raspberries and I received a yield of 12 kilograms. That's probably not very realistic, but sample data here. So they can put in their data here. And then they can see how this compares with all of the other data for the same field. So if we see here, it looks like a couple other users have put in their own yield values, and they're all lower than this particular user's. So for this user, they can be like, okay, so it looks like I'm doing things correctly. My yield per acre is greater than all the other users in the database. So I can't be doing too badly. So what's another use case? Well, say your yield value was somewhere around 5 kilograms per acre. So you're like greater than 20%, or your value is less than 80% of all the other values. Well, you can go down here to the second graph and see what are these growers doing that's different to what I'm doing. So you can check your fertilizer value. So say you used 1 kilogram of this fertilizer per acre, but you look at all of the other values inputted by different growers, and you see, oh my goodness, I'm using way too little fertilizer. So that could explain why your yield value is a particular amount. And I'm going to go back to Onion because I have a special card here. So it's also possible that the user doesn't have data for a particular field. Maybe this farmer wants to plant onions, and they have a plot of onions, but they don't fertilize their plot for whatever reason. And they're kind of looking to see how much fertilizer I can use. So they can go down here to this card, and they can see that the mean amount of fertilizer across all of the database entries, so across the 15 other growers that have inputted their data, is around this particular value. So this graph isn't actually fantastic because it's a little spread out. But if it was a more compact graph and like all the values were distributed around a specific point, it could tell the user that, hey, a lot of people are giving this amount of fertilizer. Maybe I should do the same. Okay, so that's the analysis page. And that's about it. Oh, we'd like to show off the profile page as well, which is here. So this is a very simple page. It basically just displays the user's name, their email, their username, which will allow them to set later, and also their affiliation. So in this case, Farmers Inc. All right, I think that's about it. I'm going to put the URL for our app in the chat if you guys want to take a look as well. I'm going to send it back to Aiden to wrap us up, I think.
Okay, yeah. So in conclusion, our app is a pretty bare bones so far. We can upload data, analyze it, and make accounts. That's about it. In the future, if we were to continue, we would add an option for private data and make it possible to share private data into the public domain. And we'll add incentive to do that by giving access to more public data if they upload private data to the public data. We also are going to make a more like advanced category management system if we were to continue this. Probably make it possible to add like more than one category. Any questions?
I'm going to say,
Yeah,
y'all are awesome. Yes, go judges, go.
Hey, this is Brianne from Google. Just have a quick question. Have you guys considered adding in any mapping capabilities into this?
Mapping capabilities like location?
Exactly. So that, you know, they could see, you know, based on their region, how they're doing compared to others, etc.
We have not, but that is a very good idea. And if we were to expand this, we would definitely do that.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much. Great job.
Catherine or Sandy?
Yeah, this is Catherine. So I really love this approach, and I think part of the reason is because it does kind of allow for a lot more privacy than what I think we had originally kind of pictured. And so I would say another consideration for your design as you're working, especially if you incorporate the location, is you may have to start looking at thresholds for like value suppression. So it's just me and one other person growing raspberries in this community. If I theoretically am not supposed to have intel into what that person is up to specifically, there may have to be like a, sorry, there's just two of you, or we don't have enough data to provide that information. But I do like this approach where it's like, this is how you are comparing to the other behaviors of similar users without any sort of specific like, hey, Brad's farm is doing better than yours.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Sandy, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just, first of all, I want to say, William, Aiden, and the rest of the team, really nice job. Let me ask you basic questions first. Are you guys all high schoolers, you said?
Yes.
What grade are you guys in?
I'm a senior, but we have a junior on our team as well who worked on this project.
I'm pretty psyched to hear that, and I'm glad you guys are participating. This is great news at the time. Good. So I understand you guys are not ag specialists, but I'll ask you the same question which I asked earlier. What is the problem you're trying to solve here? If I was a farmer, or if I were running a farming association in the state, which had a bunch of farmers. Why would I come to you guys, and what would you help me solve? What's the problem statement?
Oh, that's a really good question. And I think the main purpose, I think, of using an application like ours is just to try to maximize your farm's efficiency. And you can do that by kind of comparing what you're doing at your farm with what other farmers are doing at their farms. So as an example, I'm going to go back here to this analysis page, where they can see how their, so yield is basically how productive their field is, right? So they can see, okay, so my productivity is 3 kilograms per acre. How does that compare to other farmers across Oregon? So in this particular case, it's like smack dab in the middle. It's not fantastic, it's not terrible. And what they can do with our application is try and explore why that might be the case. Why isn't my yield higher than some of the other people? Why is it lower? Or why isn't it higher than some of the other people? And they can go down here to explore some of the other data fields. It's like here, into soil nitrogen. They can look and see, okay, my soil nitrogen level of 50 milligrams per kilogram is greater than this percentage of all the entries in my database. So that's probably a good sign. If it's much greater than, actually, sorry, that didn't make sense, I'm sorry. Let me restate that. But basically the purpose is to see what factors may influence your productivity to be as high or as low as it is. So say you're seeing a low yield compared to everyone else across the database. And then you look at your fertilizer to see, okay, could it be I'm applying too little or too much fertilizer? And they see, okay, my fertilizer use is actually less than 90% of what the amount of fertilizer everyone else is using. Could it be could my low yield be due to me not spreading enough fertilizer? So kind of those use cases, just your productivity and then investigating the reasons, potential reasons for why your productivity is a certain way.
William, I think you're up to something good. I like those responses. A couple of suggestions. It could be increasing productivity. It could be increasing profitability, operational efficiency, because that's how I'll come to you. I'll give you an example. I worked on a similar project in another state. It was about rice farming. And they were putting a bunch of water and they were losing a bunch of money, A, with excessive watering because of leakage, and B, overwatering the rice fields. And it was happening because there was an inability to sense or monitor or control a site specific to watering with leaks or, gosh, whatever, any lack of connectivity, because the farms are huge and you just can't have people all over. And what we did was we put some water controllers there with some sensors and some connectivity. Now the farmer knew exactly where the leak was happening. He could apply a fix right there and then, and he could manage his water connectivity. Now take that complete data, aggregate that data on your platform, and you'll have a huge operational efficiency, and that it can kind of spread across the entire association or state or whatever you have. We came up with a really good stat, William. I think they said if we could enable this technology across 4 states, I think it was Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Missouri, like folks who do rice farming, and you use these sensors and pumps, it would be equivalent to taking 70,000 cars off the road. So essentially, you're saving carbon emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. So you're kind of putting a technology for good. Not only are you helping agriculture technology or ag tech, but you're also putting some, sustainability factors out there. So keep thinking of the problem statement when you put anything, something like this. And my quick follow-up question is, this looks like a web platform. What are you thinking about security? I mean, we're all competitors when it comes to farmers. So
security as in like who can see the data, or like how do we make sure?
Yeah, all of the above. Like, give me a. Have you thought of security from that standpoint? Who can see what data? Are you letting them identify? Like you showed me a name of a user, my farmhouse. Will you allow that? What do you think? Have you guys thought through that?
Right. So we definitely want to value the privacy of our users. Like you were saying, if there are only, or as Catherine was saying, if there are only 2 farmers of raspberries, and you're one of them, and then there's only one other data source, you kind of know exactly what kind of data your competitor has. So we definitely don't want our users to see which data belongs to which user. So this profile page, only the user would be able to see this. No one else would be able to see it. As for more general security, like protecting the database itself, we haven't really talked too much. I'm not very familiar with security. Aiden might be able to comment a little bit more on that. But in general, it's just, we're going to keep the name of the user apart from their actual data, so they can't be identified publicly. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I'm just amazed that you guys are high schoolers and thinking through all this. So I'm going to put that applause up there and just say thank you. Well done, guys.
Thank you.
That was awesome. Thank y'all. I'm gonna have to get stronger on my timekeeping, but that was so impressive. And don't thank us, William, Aiden, and team. Thank you for finding it and then putting this work in. Very impressive way to be spending your summer. So our next group, and who wants to go after that, is Rennet Consulting.
Hello, guys. I will present information from what we prepared as a group. Majority of work was done by me. I'm senior architect at Rennet Consulting. However, work it's collectively what our company has experience and expertise in that field. My presentation, it's just straight PDF file. I'm going to share my screen. A little bit about our company. We are a local Portland-based company in business for over 20 years. Our expertise in majority for web-based solution and custom application. And we try to come up with solution and find who will benefit from this solution, who will use it, how we're going to build that in very simple way, and most important, how we can sustain the solution. So I'm going to share my screen. I think. Okay. I'm sharing it. So, and go over, there is about like 20 pages on presentation. First, I'm going to present the architectural design. That's overall kind of like design what we think will best benefit for the solution that we are going to offer. To solve the first problem, the mapping, knowing what state has a lot of data, what could be presented as a mapping data, we kind of go from the very simple process, and we realized there is a lot of mapping APIs, and especially Google developed their own mapping APIs, what are really easy to integrate with other mapping processes. And we think what the best approach will be to reuse whatever already done to save money on other part of the process. And as you can see below, we have agency data, what presented different data from different agency. That's primarily some mapping data. What could be extracted and processed in another server, another processing environment, and then store it in a database for usage. Then we can use mapping from company like Google and extract their mapping, put on top of the state data, and create agricultural web app service mapping information. So that data could be presented as on the web, and different company can advertise on that area. Farmer can put their data, and the regular user can find what they're looking for. So we try to address everyone here, included farmers, users, companies, and stay together, how they can use the data, how they can use app, how they can, what's the benefits for them in this environment. So this kind of basic, very basic design done with a visual diagram and presented a map, a state. So when user open the agricultural data hub, they can see a very basic interface, a map, and they can search that map, they can sign in or sign up. Farmers can, or find the information for farmers, and very basic interface. So in order to get more benefits, they can click on a map and select, sorry, a layer, here we go, a layer on which they would like to see. And obviously that's a basic presentation, they didn't find really good pictures, but they can go and search the map layer. So they can type, for example, I want to search for a state park. So we put on top of the regular map, the state parks or fish habitat or forest protection area. And they just type and added the layer to the maps. For example, I want to know farms who is provide UPIC. That's very interesting information. And if I want to, you know, just spend the weekend on a farm, but that information, it's not really available. I have to go and search like entire web for find, you know, farms who today provide a UPIC. So I can create these layers and create a mapping interfaces for without without even logging. So this is public data available to any general public. I don't really need to sign up or log into the system. So if I log in, I can click on a farmer and or on a farm and get some more information about that farm. So for me, This is all public information what farmer decide to share with the general public, and farmer has an option to share or not to share. This information what farmer will provide, and a lot of it, this information is really benefits the farmer. And reason why, for example, has business hours, U-Pick operation, Saturday market, websites, Facebooks, fertilizer, what they use on that, and other information, product, what they grow, history of the farm, and so on. I kind of like put the scroll bar, what indicate there is way more information could be added here or will be added by the farmer. So the next screen, it's just a simple sign up process. User go and decide to sign up to see more information for the regular user. And that will help a user to have their map layers to be stored in their profile. As you can see, there is a checkbox for farmer. So when farmer select this checkbox, we can indicate more data for specifically toward the farmer. So farmer can indicate their business, their address, and the map will appear here on the right side, help them to show where they are, and they can indicate their website, primary phone number, mobile phone number. If they wanted to two-factor authentication, they can select here as well. Oops. The next screen, farmer can select a plan. So obviously there is a free plan, but they may wish to pay a little bit more to get additional benefits. And the benefits for the farmer could be, you can get a full inventory system or some additional data analysis system and something else what could be included in a plan. And obviously price for the plan, it's not real. I mean, whatever cost could be, and decision could be made later on. So the next screen where the farmer will just, if they decide to go with a not free plan, with a paid plan, they can pay with whatever credit card they have, and they can see the list of benefits what they can receive for this plan. For example, they can have U-Pick announcement, they can have some other data analysis, analytics, or some maybe data privacy, more privacy. I mean, if they're free, maybe they share all data. If they're paid, they can have privacy for the data. So after that, a user can log in. This is very simple login page with captcha information, and they can sign in for the system. So when users sign in, and that user is a farmer, they can see a dashboard. The dashboard can present a simple navigation to a different feature of the system. For example, for farmers, they may see my product, inventory, irrigation, U-Pick, fertilizer. They can have area for helping to sell their product, data analytics. They may want to find the buyer and find some help with work on farm, and they have a My Team. So My Team related to that, what for larger farm or larger corporation, maybe more than one person can manage the data on behalf of the farmer. Also, they can have mapping information. I think my video notified me what I have some problem, so I'm going to stop the video. Maybe that's what happened. Some mapping information, and for the mapping, they can have ability to select or pre-select different mapping So for example, I want to know like what state parks, weather report, economic growth around me, maybe some news could be presented on a dashboard. Also, there is area for advertisement because this is farmer, they maybe have some equipment and some other, let's say John Deere maybe advertise their information and give them some incentives to buy their product. There is a data analytics, it could be, and presented here as well. My thought to have give a farmer ability to put a different type of data on this page and add it or remove it later on. Obviously, farmers have not added any information about their farm. They just log in and create account. I try to build a process what simplify ability for farmer to add more data later on. They think, oh, I mean, that's a great system. Now let me add my farm. So here where they add the farm. So farm may have belong to the business, but farm may have a name. Again, address could be different from the address of the business, and farmer may have multiple farms located in different areas. So here, when they add a specific farm, so again, they added address, and they can see right away here at the map. Then they add a primary phone number for that farm, maybe mobile phone number, website specifically again to that farm. Farm email address if they want it to be publicly available, but that's a specific data for a specific farm. So on the next screen, they added a primary contact for that farm. So for larger company, maybe multiple people manage different farms. And following screen can add some marketing information. That's where the farmer will have a lot, will have benefits to add data and put on a public website because people can see that data when they click on their farm. And here's all parameters are optional, but maybe Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, blog, maybe some other data. They may upload the logo and put some history of the farm. So the next screen, they can add the farmer business hour. For some of them may have farm open during the weekend, and here's the time. They can add this or delete this with add button or delete with time with X box.
Hey, Alexander, I'm going to pop
so
in
the
for
next
just a
screen,
second.
they can select
and see if you're close to getting towards the end, because I want to save a few minutes for questions.
Okay, am I close to 15 minutes?
You're at about 17.
Sorry. Okay, there is a, yeah, I will try to go as fast as I can. Maybe I will go close to 20. So we have a farm type where they select what type of farm, and licenses. Some of the data could be coming from state. The next one, it's where they do mapping. So they can select the farm type and create a map around their farm. If they're using a mobile device, they can actually take the cell phone and go around and create points. And the points will be help them with create mapping. So finally, they can see their map based on the product. So they can select like different product and see if they where they are on the map. And one of the now they can add a product. So the product, they can create, select the type of the product, and that could be anything from, you know, fruit, fish, and then they select different product like apple, the name of the product, and here's the data could be changed based on the product selected. They can put pictures, final page of my presentation. It's a feature what has not been added to the system, but as obviously you haven't seen like a lot of different features what could be added, like map of irrigation system, UPIC, dates, usage of fertilizers, equipment inventory, very important, and give a lot of advertisement opportunity. For example, equipment inventory can help them with equipment recall, equipment manual and references, maintenance record, and at the same time, this data will help with the advertiser to advertise to the company with you know, like selling the tractor, for example. My team, that's a user management for larger farm. They can have multiple roles, administrator, farm manager, marketing, billing payments, and so on. Farmer can add different events, what they have, and also system can provide different notification. For example, area, fishing season, hunting season, farmers market, and so on for general public. And for business users, there is a huge marketing opportunity to farmer and non-farmer users. So that's pretty much like my pitch. I know I went over, but if anybody has any question.
That was impressive. Like, thank you. The amount of work that went into that was quite impressive. So I'm going to turn over to the judges and see if they have any questions.
Sure, this is Brianne with Google. I can go first. You know, you had mentioned, I think, some advertising in there. Is the intention of this application to be, to have the data to be publicly available, or is it to be private to the person entering in that data in themselves?
I think it's both. It's publicly available, and they can have their privacy. With a paid account, they can have more privacy. They can add individual privacy on every individual field, what they want to store or use. It's designed to have both public and private data. And in addition, if they decide to use that data as a public, they could be identify how they're going to use the data. For example, maybe I don't want to advertise some of my data as a public, but it's okay to use them as a analytics. What presented on a previous presentation by CERT company, that data could be both in exactly the same. So presentation of CERT really kind of like added my presentation, and I think there is a lot of collaboration between both presentations here as well.
And one more question. Oh, just one more question. And what do you see as one of the primary benefits to a farmer who inputs their data into the system?
I think marketing. They want to market their farm, their data, their product as much as they can. So if I'm a farmer, let's say I put my data, I want to advertise how great I am, how great my product, how excellent I am. And if that data will be advertised for general public, pretty much for free, why not? I'm going to do that. I'm going to compete with another farmer who is doing this. If I'm not doing this and everyone does, why not? So that's the whole idea, to give them free ability to advertise to general public about my product. And, you know, they can have pretty much everything this collective information about my farm, about my product. So people can go to the map, click on my farm, and see pretty much all information about my farm. And they can go from that site to my website and see additional information if they decided to.
Catherine or Sandy, any questions?
So I also noticed that there was sort of a paid tier program incorporated into this design. So I was kind of curious to find out what you expected different tiers to sort of access or unlock.
This could be more features what system can present to farmer or provide them, let's say, inventory management. Maybe basic inventory will be very basic, very inexpensive, and more complex inventory could be paid because this system will cost money, obviously. And not only the system will cost money, but maintenance of the system will cost money and improvement will cost money. So how and where money will come if someone will start paying it for services, maybe not a lot, but a little bit, to add for maintenance, maintaining licenses and other information and improve the system, that will go less to the general public. And I think that could give benefits for both, for general public and for farmers. And in addition, could be some advertisement opportunity for, companies who is selling equipment, for example.
Awesome. Anything else?
Hey, Alexander, just one question. What infrastructure or platform are you building this on or plan to build it on?
Obviously, that's totally independent of specific infrastructure, but idea could be cloud-based infrastructure or state-based system. Could be as simple as containerized technology. Front end could be as simple as single page application, I don't know, Angular. We use an Angular for very large applications and seems to be very good to for maintenance, larger application. This is pretty large. Backend, cloud-based database. This is not specifically designed for specific database or specific clouds. Whoever going to give better deal, I guess that's cloud could be used. There is no really outlined technology what the system should use. Open source. Our company is very good with open source technology, .NET, JavaScript, Angular, anybody who's provided services.
Awesome. Thank you. Again, really impressive. And judges, thanks for your insightful questions. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Jim Couples, which I'm pretty sure he's Team Terrapin.
Thank you, guys.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you.
Is my video on?
We got it.
Great. Hey, all. It's great to just see everyone's, perspectives on attacking this problem. I'm going to hit the timer, so I'm getting out of here before I run up too much of everyone's afternoon. Anyway, yeah, we are the Terrapin team, and we engaged with this design sprint for a data hub, and we're really excited to work on it. So the first thing that we were thinking is really to understand why this is desired to be built, right? So it's what we saw primarily for the reasons in the description from the initial event was to centralize information. The state has several great databases, but they're spread out. So it's getting all that in one spot. Maps are useful. This is a really big state that we all live in. So understanding where certain facilities exist, and you know, I mean, you can drive for 6 hours across Oregon. So we thought that was really important. And then also to help market products to customers, as Alex was talking about as well, we thought that this was a product that could really help the economy for our food producers. So what's the hard stuff when you're doing this? Well, the first thing is aggregating and standardizing data. And I'm listing 4 different sources of data that really that separate entities hold, and that they are either public or can easily be requested. So an example of that is federal data from NRCS. What is that? That's the National Resources Conservation. I'm blanking on the last name, but that's where they're rating our soil. Another one is state data, which is really where we're primarily focused, where there's just a plethora of different type of licenses. One of the things that might be needed are refrigerated warehouses. County data. So although restaurants are a really important part of our food ecosystem, if you're looking for, you know, what restaurants are licensed in a certain area, you're going to be going to the county level for that information. And I found that really interesting and a possible obstacle for a lot of people that are selling to restaurants. And then finally, private industry for things like logistics providers. And then the other hard stuff is enabling interactions with Oregon food producers and interested businesses. So how do we facilitate that communication and sales between the food producers and wider business ecosystem? And we were trying to really approach this from a state perspective. So they should be facilitating those sales and introductions and getting out of the way and not inserting themselves as some permanent middle person, but letting the farms, ranches, dairies, and seafood producers connect with the business system and then stepping aside. So to do all that, you want to build a data hub. And this is what we ended up building. We called it the Ag Hub of Oregon. And this is what it looks like. I'm going to get out of my Google Slides and show you what the walkthrough of this would be. So this is the site. There's an opportunity if you're a food producer to create a profile. We put things into 4 different buckets: dairies, ranches, farms, and seafood producers. Also the State of Oregon portal. So this is where the state would be putting in license information, and all that information is already public, as you can see it in places right here where they list everything. But we thought that this would, our site would be pulling live, or really the state site facing the public would be pulling live from these data sets. And then lastly, paid services. So this would be the third parties that would be interested in the data that the state is collecting. And I'll go more into those markets soon. So we also created profiles of people that we thought would be interested in this. So I'm going to try to quickly walk through those. Oops. Sorry. So the first one is a dairy located, Platts Oak Hill Dairy. Shout out to Sean Irvine and Independence. So this is a local dairy, and we did a profile. I mean, I was fortunate, and so are my colleagues, that we've talked a fair amount with people in the agriculture dairy space. So we were able to, you know, create a scenario that they're being faced with, and that something like an Ag Data Hub would help. And so specifically, we talked about Platts Oak Hill Dairy and Independence, and they've seen a drop off in their demand for milk and cream. And that their dairy cows also have to be milked consistently. So we also imagined that there has been a problem with their usual milk processors. So what would someone like that do? Well, they would go ahead and log in, go to their profile page, and then over here we organized relevant licenses that would be to a dairy. So pasteurizers, milk haulers, And all of these are licenses, like I said, that are already held by the state. So it's trying to make that easy, as well as making a piece that's push notifications that could quickly go out to interested other parties. And here we've listed a couple of their products. But for this situation, what they're looking for at Platt's Oak Hill Dairy is a dairy products plan. So they would just simply enter that and a screen would populate with this information. Now, we didn't get a chance to hook the back end and the front end completely up, but this is what that would look like over here. And we used a lot of Google products on this. So we imagined them needing a new dairy product plant, and what they can quickly do is they're located in Independence, so they can see this map and try to find the closest one that is to their facility, and that would say be Willamette Valley Cheese, which is right down the road from them. The second scenario that we imagined was a rancher. So all of Eastern Oregon is full of ranches, and this is a real ranch right here, the Double F Ranch. They do a CSA box. And so what we were imagining was that perhaps their regular meat processing facility or slaughterhouse was unfortunately struck by something like the coronavirus. And that's been happening all throughout the United States. And when that happens, you have to shut down that slaughterhouse or meat production facility. And then the question is what are you going to do with your livestock, whether it's cattle, lamb, pork, whatever it might be. So a similar scenario where they would be, let me go back to, whoops, sorry.
I was gonna say, Jim, if you're trying to share something, we don't see anything right now.
Oh, hold on one second. Sorry about that.
No, there we go. You're back. Oh, hey, Cal.
Hi, Cal. Oops. Let me get to the, I think I somehow got out of my Google Slides. Let me try to drum that up really quick. Huh. I'm keeping my eye on the clock, and I will have you guys out of here very quickly.
We can give you a couple extra minutes. We've given everybody else some.
Yeah, so here we are. We're talking about Jack, and he is in a scenario where he needs to, all of a sudden, he's got to find a new slaughterhouse because there's been a coronavirus has struck his facility. So he is going into his profile, and as I said, we really were looking at working with the state license information. So these would be some ones that are relevant and that are currently available. So he would be looking at the state slaughterhouse license, and then it would populate an easy screen here that would show all of that. And let me see if I can find, well, I think I unfortunately removed my my other prepared information, but we have that all on the back end as far as there's around 13 different slaughterhouses in the state of Oregon. Our next scenario would be a farmer, and this is from Ortolan Gardens, people that we interviewed for this presentation. And this is a real scenario where Ortolan Gardens is located over by Yachats. They were invited to Portland to give a talk to a chef's conference. And as you might imagine, after they did that, they were just inundated with people from the Portland area requesting their produce. So what they were really interested in and looking for was an ability to connect with some type of logistics providers. So over the past few days, what we did was we contacted those types of places. We contacted Postmates, we contacted Grubhub, and a bunch of these other people that are in that space. And what we're able to find was, oh, sorry, here we are, was Postmates was interested. So I hope you all can read this email. So a couple of hours ago, I got an email back from someone that does their food system sustainability manager. And what they said that, yeah, we might be interested in talking about that and helping out people to find that information. So in their login process, they would go ahead to their profile And we made these available licenses that might relate to them, as well as a button to hit logistics. And then that would show, well, we preset it to Postmates because they were interested, but they could easily connect with a third-party logistics provider that would be interested in moving their product from their farm over to their restaurant. And then lastly, the last scenario that we imagined was seafood. And so this is captain for the ship, the Chelsea Rose, and how we imagined them would that there's been a huge drop-off for restaurant demand. So they would probably be needing to contact more restaurants. And this was from an article that we read about this. This is a real boat, the Chelsea Rose down in Newport. And so what they need to connect with for their purpose is they need to be connecting with with restaurants, number one, and they also need to be connecting with refrigerated food sources. So we pulled this data from the state, food storage warehouses, so that people could quickly get a look at this. So this is it on the site, and this would be what they're actually seeing. And they could see each of the refrigerated warehouses. If they were delivering up in Portland, they could just quickly see a phone number. Of course, you could add more information. And they'd be able to connect with them. And I found one of the things that I found really interesting during doing this, this project was that there is not the ability to currently find that information easily with the state. So all of the restaurant information would be one of those challenges where you are collecting that from our 36 counties and then organizing it into the same database so that our food producers can easily connect with them. This is today's world, and this is an actual email that you would receive from the Gathering Together farm outside of Corvallis. So this is to show how things can be approved upon, right? They are sending out an email, usually 2, sometimes 3 times a week. This came over on Tuesday, talking about what they're currently out of, and then as well saying what they have as far as new items. So this is what we're trying to change, a better ag data system that would not only help these companies with finding similar people in the workspace that they could deal with, but also being able to connect with their B2B customers. This is the architecture that we imagined using, or you know, it's nothing as, we use Google Cloud Platform a lot for a bunch of different projects. Casey, do you want to speak briefly about this?
Sure. I mean, that's just a sample diagram for what a web app architecture might look like on Google Cloud. We don't actually have, you know, like the like this isn't like a functioning web app as is, but it's agnostic and something that could be flexible, but that's a potential direction that we can go in.
Yep. And then finally, the analytics portion. So what we thought that farms would be interested in was understanding what is around them. So we just, you know, we loaded up a bunch of information into Google Cloud, and that enabled us to look at things like what are the most common products that are grown around you. For this, we used my house. So my house is right around here in Springfield, and did about a 20-mile search, like I said, using the Google backend. And in that, it'll state sometimes some farms do not have company names or they don't publicize them, and other ones do. So farms are going to want to differentiate, and it's for the purpose of shortening our supply chains. So you're not having blueberries shipped in from all the way across the state, which would make them more competitive, because there's been a big demand for eating local. So there's an opportunity to put these analytics on top of it, and you could easily foresee putting prices and tracking trends on prices with this as well. And all this information is available within the state. There's a Blueberry Commission and all these other different commissions that are tracking these prices. It's just a matter of really centralizing this and making it more useful to people that are in the space. The people that we saw that would benefit, aside from our farms, ranches, dairies, and seafood producers, these are 3 Oregon companies. So we spoke with organically grown company, which is a pretty big food distributor based out of Portland. And what they mentioned how the Ag Data Hub would help was would increase their nimbleness for themselves and other food distributors. A scenario for that might be that a farm that they were supposed to get broccoli from for one reason or another couldn't produce it. So being able to do the other way of a push notification, asking a bunch of farms in a certain area, hey, do you have any extra broccoli that you're looking to exit? We'd like to connect with you. We spoke with Market of Choice, and they're always looking for sources for new local providers. They gave the example of they're setting up a new Market of Choice down in Medford, and they were looking for local farms that were growing potatoes around there and when they would be available. And then lastly, Oregon restaurants that are looking to meet local demand with products. So we saw all of them as being other beneficiaries and potential people that would want to license this data from the state, so it could generate revenue from the state. And then I should also say that, like, you know, I work on farm data projects, and one of the ones that my team and I have worked on is this one called All the Farms. So what this is a downstream product that the state, that would benefit from the state having this Ag Data Hub. So if you enter an address, you see your local farms. If you were to click on one of them, you'd see some pictures. And this is very similar to what Alex was saying, a little bit about the farm, contact information. So all of this really has to start with the state Ag Data Hub, where it would make it a lot easier to get this information together and help these farms market their products, as well as help the B2B connection on this. Let me go back to my presentation. So, you know, what should we do? Well, we should create an application that allows our state data to help our food producers run more proficiently and broaden their customer base. Can we do this? Oh, heck yes. This is just a big data problem or challenge, I should say, but standardizing and aggregating this data is something that's been done very, very often. And then how do we do it? Well, the most important thing isn't the tech tools or the talent. The most important thing is talking to the food producers and solving their problems, you know, and solving their most meaningful problems. And that's what we tried to do. We spent a heck of a lot of time this past week reaching out to farms, ranches, dairies, seafood providers, and trying to figure out where their pain was and how we could solve that best. So, you know, with that, I want to add one other thing. This is the state information where you could find this license information. This is for food storage warehouses. But if you contact the state, you could get information via CSV. And this is just so much more robust and so much more useful. So this is how we were able to figure out which warehouses were specializing in frozen, which ones were just refrigerated, which ones were ambient, and all of those are for 3 different types, you know, really 3 different buckets of warehouses that they would use. So there's contact information in here. So it's just much more robust than what you would normally see right here. And it would, I think, greatly help those food producers connect with these other Oregon businesses. All right, I tried to get through that as quick as possible. I think I'm done sharing my screen. My video is stopped. Can I answer any questions about this project and the products?
Jim, you're always awesome. Judges, questions for Jim and the Terrapin team.
This is Brianne with Google. I'll just go first again. I don't actually have any questions, but what I really liked about this one was that you're using data sets that are already available, and so you're not dependent just upon, you know, manual data entry. So I think that was a really good approach. But yeah, I thought this was really well done.
Thanks. You know, we devoted a lot of time to trying to connect with people and finding their problems, as well as a lot of time on the state site, contacting them about licenses, as well as contacting the counties for information, especially on restaurants, because we saw that as a big customer. And that was just, you know, a great example of how you've got to put all this data together. Same thing with connecting with private industry. You know, we really went out there and made calls to Shipt, Postmates, Grubhub, asking who would be interested in being a third-party logistics providers dealing from farms directly to restaurants.
Nice work.
Thanks.
I agree with you, Bree. Jim, well thought through session. I really enjoyed specifically how you've reached out to stakeholders and partners and showed that real time, but overall a well thought through session.
Thank you. It's a huge learning opportunity for me and my colleagues as well. I know I learned a ton, and me, Casey, and Emily have worked together a lot in political data, but it was wonderful to connect with Kelly, and she had some UX chops that we certainly, that came in handy.
Awesome. Anybody else?
Hey, it's Catherine. Jim, I'm curious in your conversations with some of these folks who would be users, what kind of considerations or concerns that they specifically spoke about, either regarding privacy or publication of some of this data, and sort of what some of their imagining was for whose data they'd have access to, and then what kind of data they might be expected to provide.
Oh yeah, that's a huge part and especially farming out of the 4 buckets, as far as exposing data and who's going to know what. So what we told them was what we were imagining, and we didn't get a chance to get into this in the presentation, but one of the most opaque areas, if you're a farmer, is dealing with co-packers and understanding what they're charging. And it's funny because everybody kind of wants to know what everyone else's data is, but nobody wants to share their own. They're not interested in telling you how much fertilizer they're putting down or inputs. So we didn't, kind of knowing that that was going to be the perspective of a lot of them, we didn't consider that to be realistic, that they would be willing to share that. But one of the areas that we were, that people were interested in was co-packing information. So in that application, there's a part where you can upload documents, and we were thinking of that the farms would upload their co-packing documents, which is when you're going to a facility and they're processing your broccoli or peas or whatever. And then we would anonymize that data from 100, 200 farms that might contribute. And then we could show a baseline price as to what those farms would be paying there and what they can expect. If you talk to people that are in agriculture, everyone thinks that they're getting a worse deal. So, and it's opaque. It's like buying a used car where it's going to be flexible, and it's going to be different for someone that processes 100,000 pounds of something than someone that processes 1,000. So I kind of didn't think that we'd get a lot of information on inputs, and the state doesn't get much information on that either. If you get licensed for pesticides and things like that, and they're in very broad categories, and no one's the data for pesticides and stuff, that's not going to be something I think that they'd be comfortable with sharing with others. But we thought they'd be comfortable sharing information as long as it was anonymized on something like co-packing, because when we talk to people in the industry, that's one of the areas that that provides the most frustration and would benefit from being anonymized and creating baseline prices.
Thanks, Jim. All right, judges and design spurners. Jim, round of applause. That was awesome. I was getting feedback on the back end about how good of a job you do. And I said, it's pretty much standard. He always shows up this way really well. So we're actually going to move away from the data hub. I know it's shocking, like totally shocking, but we're going to Safe Place for Youth. And I'm not sure if we have 2 presenting teams. So since I don't know if there are 2, I'm going to go ahead and call on Mark Davis and the Open Eugene team. And if you are part of a second team, shoot me a note so that we can get you called next. But Mark, the floor is yours.
Okay, I would like to share my screen if I could.
You should have access to do that.
Awesome. Let me make sure I picked the right one. Okay, cool. It looks like I am doing stuff. So I don't have a, I need to get control out of the way here. I don't have a slide deck. I'm just going to do a demo and kind of like show you what's going on. When we started the sprint, we were a little bit out of phase with the design sprint, and we had this little help book. I'm from Open Eugene, we're a Code for America brigade. You can find out more about us at openeugene.org. But we build civic software as infrastructure to help out civic organizations. And one of the ones that that was on our list to help out was building this little help book. And basically it was a resource directory kind of stuff. So we thought, hey, we'll go ahead and we'll do the little help book, and we'll include some safe youth data in here as well. And then just kind of go for the mental leap of, you could have an app that's just like this, that was more specifically tailored to the safe places for youth stuff. So basically, you can search for places, you can filter by category here. I looked up in the Safe Place Network a couple of different places. All my stuff's Eugene centric because, hey, I'm coming from Eugene. So I went and looked up that data. If there was other categories, we could take a look at those, but they don't really apply to this conversation. Of course, there's a mapping component as well. And so we've got a way to, show all the different safe places for youth that would be in a particular area. And if they're on their phone, maybe they could jump right to it and, get a phone number and some information about, what was going on. One of the challenges when you're creating software that's used by agencies is whatever tools they're using to manage the data, you don't want to make it harder on them to manage their data. So one of the things that we do is I'm seeing some chat messages. Oh, there you go. One of the things that we do is we'll take a spreadsheet of data that you might be used to using on Google Docs, and then we'll upload it into a tool called Airtable. And so Airtable is nice because it looks a lot like Google Docs. But what it does is it gives us a lot more capabilities on the back end. So you'll be able to edit your information in a pretty simple way, pretty straightforward for the agency to use. And then we can use it in more interesting ways, like building apps for you. And so that's a really nice feature of using Airtable, is it provides an API. And so we can do some tricks on the server to get that data from Airtable, cache it so it's fast to find resources, and build an app for you. And when I say app, I mean app as in this is a web app, but it's also a mobile app. So if I was trying to get a different background there so you can see when you're looking at it on a smaller screen, it adapts to the screen size. And not only that, this is a progressive web app. So you could actually you could sell it through the store or do something like that. But you can see that there's a different experience that you get when you're running mobile that is what people might expect for that screen size. So depending on your screen size, you get a different experience. Another thing that's interesting about agency data is it has a tendency to get stale. And it's a lot of work going out and finding, keeping that data fresh. But what you'll run into is people that will use your app, see a mistake, and then they want to email you and tell you what's going on. So to try to shorten that loop a little bit, what we've done is we've added some features to the app that let users in the world submit changes. So if they see something and that's wrong, like maybe the library, Springfield, maybe the Eugene Public Library has a bad address. I don't know why that would be a thing, but like new address, blah. You could do that. Any notes, maybe, I don't know, take a picture or something, and you can submit this. And that'll automatically show up in the Airtable in a special place called updates. And so your data is still protected, but there's a way for you to solicit feedback from the community and make that data more accessible to people. If other folks want to use the data, like outside of the app, we also expose an API. So if you wanted to, on your website, you know, do something different with the data, it's super easy to get a hold of that data as well. You can either get it from Airtable directly, or we expose an API for you as well. And when I say we, I'm talking about the public-private partnerships that go into building apps like this. Open Eugene is a volunteer organization. And so we create projects like this. We put teams together of volunteers to do this. We're a Code for America brigade. So we talk to other brigades nationally solving similar problems, and we share resources. MVP Studio is a local hosting service. And so what's really great about MVP Studio is it's free hosting for civic apps. So if you are civically minded, your app is doing good, you can write your app in such a way you can containerize it. And so we use Docker and we use Kubernetes, and we can put the app on MVP Studio at no cost. It's also, containers are super handy because you can put it to any of the cloud providers. All support containerization. So you can take it somewhere if you want to get like a higher service level agreement or pay real money, you could do that. I think that's about it, really. Dark Matter Consulting is my personal company, so when I donate my time to that, I like to put myself on the thing. We always try to license the data, and I didn't know what the license was for this one. I didn't reach out and get enough information about that, but we always license the data, and then the code's under the MIT license, so other people can, if they like it, they can remix it for their own purposes. And I think that's about really all I wanted to talk about.
Thanks, Mark. I'm going to open it up to the judges.
And this is where I can ask questions now, right?
Go for it.
Is this a site that launches using any QR code recognition? Do folks that are like listed within this little help book have codes that can be scanned so that someone can do more searching online, or is that something that hasn't happened yet?
We don't have any QR codes embedded in this one, but you could certainly do that. Especially, I'd have to look at how a progressive web app interacts with the camera and on the devices to run through that. But I would say it's completely possible to do that.
Cool. And is the little help book in Eugene similar to the Street Routes guide that's handed out in paper form up in Portland?
You got it 100%.
Okay,
And
cool.
so, yeah, the little help book has always been a printed thing.
Okay.
And this year, they had a change of heart to open the data up. So we're going to put it online for free for everybody.
It's very cool. Do you know if Street Routes is aware of it and maybe is considering a similar, or do they already have a similar model?
I think they have one. I think that was part of the impetus, was like, hey, wait, Portland's doing it. We got to do it too.
I've never looked it up. We always just have stacks of them at work. So thank you.
Yeah.
This is Brianne. I just have a quick question. Are you anticipating, because this seems like a great tool, are you anticipating opening this up to other areas throughout the state of Oregon?
Sure, yeah. I mean, you can do it a number of ways. We could either make a bigger data set, or we could remix this for individual regions that wanted it. Resource guides are super hot right now. People can't get information by wandering around and talking to people. So there's a high demand for resource guides. And so, yeah, we're putting everything out there online. If they've got coding resources, they can, we're using the simplest tools we can. And if they don't have coding resources, they could contact us, and we'd either coordinate with a more local brigade that can help them, or we would help them out. There's also a sustainability model around these things. And so if people wanted to be a backer of a project or be a sponsor of a project, there's ways for them to contribute financially if they don't have talent. I'm going to stop showing my screen.
Sandy, do you have anything you want to ask Mark?
Yes, thank you. Mark, that was really good. Quick question. Open Eugene, can you talk a little bit more about that volunteer resource you have?
Yeah, so Open Eugene is a Code for America brigade. And so Code for America is a 501c3 nationally recognized, thing. And then what Open Eugene is we're the local chapter of that, basically. Like there's a code for PDX, there's Open Eugene. And so we're a known quantity in the region. We use infrastructure. We use infrastructure like the Eugene Tech Slack. And so the project is happening online. People know how to find projects, they know, and we advertise for things on another resource called the Switchboard, which is a lot like the Portland Switchboard, but the Eugene stuff is more it's more civic oriented. The Eugene Tech one is, it's less about startups and it's more about, hey, here's a volunteer opportunity, or here's a a challenge that's happening, and so we got pretty far reach. I'm in Sherwood right now, so I'm actually closer to Portland than I am Eugene, but we've got our designer was in Oak Ridge, and our graphic artist was in Eugene. So it's a pretty good network. There's about 1,000 folks that have Slack accounts. I wouldn't say there's ever 1,000 people on the Slack, but anyway, it's a number. But yeah, so we've got pretty good access to volunteers. Volunteerism, by the way, is way down right now because everybody's got a lot of things occupying their time. But yeah, if you need volunteers for a project, definitely let me know. I'm well connected in that zone.
Good, really nice. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? Mark, I appreciate you for so many reasons, including giving us like 3.5 minutes back in your agenda. You're just winning on all fronts.
Nice, thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for getting the team involved. And it's pretty cool that we had 2 teams from Eugene. I love that we can make these statewide initiatives with this whole online process. All right, so I have one more team, Team Alchemy, whose name I did not have prior. Apologies for the slide that Justin updated it because he's so good. Mark, another place where you gave us an opportunity to correct things on our side. Like, you're just gonna get high fives galore. And I agree, Team Alchemy is a great name. So we're gonna hand it over to Team Alchemy and see what they did this week.
All right, hi everyone. Thanks for sticking around for us. We'll get a screen share up here shortly. Excellent. So we also worked on the Safe Place for Youth Network app. If you want to go to the next slide. I'm Chelsea Spangler. I'm a software engineer.
I'm Danny Shoemaker. I'm also one of the software engineers on this project.
And I'm Jenna Goldman, and I'm another software engineer on the project.
Great. So our challenge was to create an app that could work on Android or iOS that would consolidate data resources that are currently in a lot of different places around the internet for at-risk youth to find safe locations where they can go in a crisis and people they can contact. We wanted the front end to be intuitive and culturally relevant, and we wanted it to be appealing enough that young people might be inspired to download it prior to finding themselves in a crisis, so that if they do find themselves in a dire circumstance, it's already right there at their fingertips. So next slide. Our approach was we wanted first and foremost to build something that would be actually useful. Two, to keep it simple and intuitive, because again, if you're using it in a crisis situation, you're not looking for a lot of bells and whistles. You just want an easy way to get to the information that you need. And then three, this is a design challenge, so we wanted to also make it stylish and appealing to look at. So our process, we began with information gathering, looking at the data resources that we did have available to us, and meeting with Tabitha, who gave us some really helpful feedback on what the organization was looking for and what they envisioned that the end users would be looking for. We then thought about what kind of technology we would like to use to implement, and we did decide to build a mock-up. So we did a rudimentary backend using MongoDB for our database, and it will take a number of labor hours to get all of the data standardized in a way that will allow it to be useful technologically. But what we did, just to save time, is we took a couple of examples from each type of data source and loaded those up so we would have something to play with in building our front end, which you'll see a demo of. And then for the front end, we went with React Native because it is tech agnostic. It should work for any type of device, Apple or Android. So anyone should be able to access it. We then moved on to some wireframing to sketch out what the app should actually look like before we started to build it. And then we sat down and coded it out and got a working prototype going.
All right, thanks, Chelsea. So as Chelsea mentioned, we spent a good amount of time in the past week thinking about wireframing. We definitely wanted to come up with a stylish, somewhat youthful look for the application, given the audience it's intended for. The other thing that was really important, as Chelsea said, was keeping it simple and intuitive. So we're going to walk through a couple of those wireframes, starting with our nearby page, which is also the home page of the mobile application. And you can see here across the bottom of the application, we actually have a simple navigation bar that is always present regardless of the page that you're on. So it's very simple to see where you are in terms of the full kind of flow of the app, and it's easy to move along between the pages. But here on our homepage, we wanted to kind of surface the most important information first. If someone is in a crisis and they whip out the app, they need to get somewhere safe. We want to show them a couple of nearby places based on their current location, utilizing geolocation features, and surface with those recommendations for where the individual could go then and there. So we do provide a couple of nearby cards to indicate what those places are and whether or not they're currently open. With the data we were given, there was kind of a mix of location types. So New Avenues for Youth may be open, regardless of the day or time, but a library isn't going to have that same consideration. So we wanted to make sure we were able to provide the places that would be accessible at that current moment. We can go ahead and move on to the next slide. The next wireframe we came up with was a map view. So this utilizes a Google Maps integration directly in the React Native application. Currently, based on the conversation we had with Tabitha from New Avenues for Youth, we are focused on building for Portland, Multnomah County area. So the map does default to the Multnomah County area, and all of our sample data right now is located around that area. But this map view is exactly what you would think it would be. It's a full page map view with markers for each of the safe places that can be tapped to view more information about each place. All right, as an alternative to the map view, we also created a list view wireframe. So this would, similar to the map view, allow the user of the app to locate places nearby, again, see relevant information about the place, but it's rendered in a list view, obviously, instead of requiring the user to render a full map view. So this list view does allow for searching for places, in addition to filtering by a place category or services offered. So those little different colored buttons just under the search input are the different ways that users could filter through the safe places. And then finally, we came up with a wireframe for a detail page for each place. So this would be just more space to provide some more details about the individual safe places, the address for the place, a full set of hours in addition to just whether or not it's open now. We would like to provide, each day of the week, the opening and closing times. We make it easy to get directions to that place if you need to get there right away. Hitting the get directions will actually open Google Maps on your phone if you have that service with the destination set to the particular safe place that you're looking at. Another big piece of what we tried to build here is not only to help youth identify safe places, but ideally also key individuals who are available at these places and are hopefully trained in some of the programs to be able to assist individuals coming through the safe places. So where possible, if there is a key contact available for the safe place, we would provide that information here as well and make it very easy for the individual to reach out to that contact should they have that desire. And with that, like we said, we're all software engineers here, so we were really excited to actually build an app. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Danny, and she's going to take us through a little demo of the app.
Thanks, Jenna. Thanks, Chelsea. All right, so for our app demo, I'll just start really quickly with some of the data that we're pulling in. Chelsea mentioned that we've created a basic backend using Node and Express. And here you can see some of the data that's in our Mongo database. At this time, because we weren't given contacts for each location, we don't have contacts built into this, so those are going to be hard-coded in the app at the moment. But we have information that was provided for, I think we have 20 locations currently, and we have distinguished them by the information that we thought was most relevant. And I will show you some of our app. All right, so on our, this is the app as it is right now, not our wireframe, so we can interact with it. These will be the 5 nearest locations. This is currently our home screen code on the right here. And a user could click on a given location to, sorry, it seems to be slow to load at the moment. Oh, there it goes. So you can see when we click on one of those locations, we get information about that particular location, including when it will close. You could click on Get Directions to go to to open up your map app, and getting hours would pull up some of the hours for that individual location. At the moment, as mentioned, we don't have the contact information for each location, so we've hard-coded Tabitha for all of our locations. And you can see this would work with the Gresham Library as well. And we could navigate through, we have here our navigation. We have a similar setup for each of the pages where there's a stack navigation that would allow you to navigate from each of the pages in the tab navigation to a deeper page, the detail page that's consistent for across the different tabs. So if I switch over to the tab navigator, we can click on a location and see that some of the details that we felt were most important for a youth to be able to access quickly. readily available. And let's see, there is also, this is scrollable. Oh, and the colors are different depending on the category. And then on our list page, currently we are viewing all of the locations that are considered safe places in our database, but we can filter those and click on New Avenues for Youth, and we can see a different color pop up for that category. All right. And we would like at some point, Chelsea will talk about this shortly, but one of our goals for our future vision would be to have a favorites option that would present a list somewhat similar to this, where a user could save some of the locations that they have found the most valuable. All right. And I'll pass it over to Chelsea to talk about some of our future plans.
Great, thank you, Danny. So as you just saw, we do have the scaffolding in there for a favorites page. And one of the considerations that we wanted to think through there was, in terms of accessibility, not everyone using this app is going to necessarily feel comfortable creating a username and login. Because if you're at risk, there might be all kinds of things going on in your life. You might not trust somebody else to hold your data. So we would want to build in some kind of ability to cache your favorited locations right on your device. So it doesn't have to go in a database somewhere, but you can still have some persistence so that if you close the app or shut down your phone, you come back later, you still have those favorites. Which is not to say that you couldn't also build in user authorization for those who do want to opt into that and collect some of the data. Other caching considerations that we would want to build in, people aren't always going to have access to good Wi-Fi or mobile data. So we'd like to make the maps and at least some of the locations also cacheable so that you could use this when you're offline. Let's see, what else do we have here? We wanted to add, this would require data that we don't have access to right now, but could be a consideration to keep in mind while collecting data from more places to load into this app, would be some additional filters or tags for locations, so that you could, for example, search by if you wanted someone who has stated that they are an LGBTQIA friendly person, contact, or if you want to find somebody who's a licensed social worker, or if you want to know that the location you're going to is wheelchair accessible. Lots of things you could build in there, even if it's just a little icon that pops up on the card with the description of the location, or we could make it searchable by those identifiers. And then finally, we would want to build in some kind of administrative side of this app that you wouldn't see as a user, but would allow the administrators to add more locations and contacts as they get them. So we didn't have time to build that in, but it sounds like Airtable, which the previous team used, might be a really excellent solution for this. So we're excited to take a look into that. So that's our app. Any questions?
Judges, the floor is yours. I'm super impressed. That was amazing.
Thank you.
I see all smiles from Tal.
I'm just stunned. I don't even know what to say. I don't really have any questions.
So Jenna, Danny, and Chelsea and others, a really nice job. I really like the way you had the wireframe and then an actual demo. Just hats off to you guys. Enjoyed that, the level of detail you guys went into. So just a philosophical question, is this a for-profit, non-profit? Is a monetization model built in here? What are you guys thinking?
Well, we're building it for a nonprofit organization, and we're just engineers who have some time and want to use our powers for good. So one thing we had also discussed with Tabitha is trying to put together just some data that they could use on grant applications in terms of how many dev hours we think it would take to get this built out, to help her know how much money to ask for to try and get something like this built completely ready to go and at the scale that they need.
Got it. Great. How much time have you spent in this process? I'm curious, like.
I think Danny is best equipped for this one.
Well, you know, a big piece of it was we're actually primarily web developers. This was our first experience with a native app. So that was, as part of the learning curve, was learning React Native, coming from, you know, a web-based React background. And that, I feel, has been fairly intuitive. But there are certain pieces like the, you know, there's that scrolling list of buttons on here.
Yeah.
And that was a piece, just one example of a challenge with React Native. I was expecting to use radio buttons there. Radio buttons don't exist in React Native. So there's certain pieces like that are, that just took a little bit of learning and adjusting. And then there are other pieces like this can be rendered using the same core component as this, something called a flat list. And that was something that I think recognizing how we could harness that to our advantage made, ended up being much faster than having to build out that functionality in a web-based React platform. So there's some ways, for me, the biggest time consumption was before starting this project, when some of us were learning how React Native worked. But once I think we got up to speed on that, it went fairly smoothly.
We did probably spend, you know, we've worked full time on this since the event kicked off last Thursday afternoon, with some React Native education in the days coming or prior.
Well, nice job, guys. Tabitha, sounds like you were a mentor in this. Really well done.
I can take no credit for this aside of sharing data sets and an overarching vision. So I refuse to take any credit in that regard, but I am flabbergasted. It's beautiful.
We definitely appreciated your feedback and helping us recognize where the priorities would be, and
I think that makes all the difference.
Yeah, how to get into the mindset of what would be most valuable, what information.
And I must have articulated it well, because it literally, like, I want to take it off the screen and go out to the world with it. So
yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. I think I speak for all three of us when I say one of the main reasons we wanted to become software engineers is to be able to build things like this that are impacting our community in a positive way. So thank you for the opportunity.
Y'all are awesome. Again, like, I see the applause going already. Thank you so much. Love the thoughtful design approach. Part of why we deconstructed these hackathons in 2-week-long sprints was to include more folks, and what I love seeing is just that. So I sent a note to everybody. We're almost at 4:30, but I can speak from experience, having spent time with the super awesome care wheelers, that you need to stick around to see this. And it's our hardware solution. It incorporates with Bluetooth. It's pretty cool. So I'm going to hand it over to the Care Wheels, super awesome Care Wheelers team, and understand if folks have to leave, but hope that a few can stick around. And don't forget, this is recorded. So with that, the floor is over to the Care Wheelers.
Miss Snow, I was asking if I could ask a question to the previous group. I should have, yeah, I should have talked a little bit earlier. But my name is Ishan Sinha. I'm a current student studying computer science and business at Georgia Tech. This app really applies to my interests and me as a high schooler, as I would always go out to Panera Bread or Starbucks or the library to study with groups or by myself, because at my house I was too distracted. So the first question I wanted to ask you all was, sorry if I'm taking up too much time, but this is something that really, really interests me a lot. For example, when I would look up on Google, you know, Panera Bread was open. I knew that all Panera Breads had Wi-Fi, and I knew that Panera Bread was a good place to study. But then I'd show up at a Panera Bread, they'd be like, oh, sorry, we're closed today, or we're not doing dine-in today, especially after the pandemic is happening. So I was wondering how the communication would work between the organizations, the Safe Place organizations, and the administration, like you guys talked about at the end of your presentation. Would there be a platform for the organizations to input themselves any changes that are going on, any immediate changes such as in hours or in Wi-Fi accessibility or in certain amenities or in contact information, or will the administration have to be contacted by them and then implemented that, which in my opinion might take a little bit longer, but I was wondering about, you know, how fast the communication of changes would be.
Seems like we might need to learn some more about Airtable before we have a good answer to that question. But from the look of it, it might actually solve that problem too. But appreciate that question, because that's a really good consideration for us to have in mind moving forward.
I think it's also it's a really good consideration for the Safe Place for Youth network and the nonprofits that are working to expand this network. You know, some of these places are obviously going to be easier to keep an eye on in terms of things like hours and things like that, where they have direct control over that information. Whereas some of the other types of locations that they're hoping to expand Safe Place certification to, Starbucks, libraries, you know, that's obviously a different set of information that they don't have direct control over. So really good considerations, and the ultimate solution is probably going to be a combination of kind of both of your proposed solutions.
Right, for sure. And the next thing I wanted to ask was, will there be a review system where students and or, you know, whoever else uses the app can review certain locations and talk about the quality or talk about the Wi-Fi quality of that location? And, you know, how are you going to verify that that's a legitimate review as well, if that's possible?
Oh, that's not actually something that we had discussed at all, but I think that there's definitely, I can certainly see an expansion of the current design to take that into account and store that additional information in whatever database system ends up being used, and to have more of a possibly a networking component.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I think it's also probably good idea or inspiration for Tabitha and those working with the Safe Place for Youth network. You know, I believe the intent there is for these individual locations and groups of locations to get certified in some kind of way and be officially recognized as a safe place within this network. But adding some kind of, you know, review or social component like you're proposing would be a great way for them to have kind of a pulse on how impactful and helpful these places are actually in practice. That's really cool.
Right. Yeah, thank you. And the last thing I would say was that another thing that impacted me in my decision of where to go to study or where to go with the group would be pictures that were provided on Google of the, you know, the different locations. So if I saw, you know, like a Dunkin' Donuts that was not very well kept or was very small, had only 6 seats, I would assume that, you know, most likely there wouldn't be enough space for me to work with a group of 10 people. So that wouldn't necessarily be told just by the name of the location and by the contact information, right? So I was wondering if that's something like pictures of the locations would also be provided.
Yeah, I think for this app, possibly more feasible would, I imagine there would be a way that we could link it to the Google record. Just because of what we were talking about with trying not to consume too much Wi-Fi on this app. I don't think we would want to locally host those images, but it's a good thing to consider. We could possibly get it linked into the broader Google record of that place.
Right, for sure, for sure. Thank you. I just had these questions because I was very interested in it because I had this same problem of figuring out where to go to study in high school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really helpful feedback.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your ideas. We should have connected with you.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, while we have you, I do have a quick question for you. One of the features that we had been considering was sort of a preview of the location in a map view. So like on the detail page that provides an overview with some of the details for a specific location, having details there, having a little preview with a pin for this specific location in a little map. Is that something that you would find useful, or do you feel like you already have a sense for where those locations are in your area?
So in my opinion, that improves, that just makes the job for us a lot easier. And in my opinion, that would improve the overall appeal of your app versus another app that did not have that feature. So I would always say, if it's not too hard, or if it doesn't, like you said, the Wi-Fi problem was something that, you may consider, so therefore you link it to Google. But if I did see a preview, like if I could hover over that certain location and then see a quick summary of what it is, one picture that shows what it is, preferably of the interior, because that's what most kids are going for. And then also like a rating out of 5 stars based on reviews, that would give me, incentive to click on that and, therefore look at it. Another thing is that when you don't want to like constantly click on a bunch of different maps to see it, because a lot of times, for example, my Wi-Fi is super slow. So if I have to click on a bunch of different things, it might take me 5 minutes to get through every single location, versus if I could just hover over it, then it may be a little bit faster, if you get what I mean. Yeah.
Thank you. That's good feedback.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
And absolutely no need to apologize for interrupting. That was super helpful. And again, just like proves out why we're trying to look at these design sprints in a different way, because you have now provided feedback from someone that is in the age demographic that would consider using this app. And so that's part of this process, and that's awesome. So thank you. I see nodding, and that's good. All right, I think now we're really ready for the super awesome care wheelers, and this is going to be exciting for everybody too.
Okay, so perfect. Thanks so much, Karen. Thanks so much for every team that has participated so far. So I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know if you can see it. Okay, can everyone see this?
We got it.
Okay, perfect. So thanks so much for having us. This is really an interesting challenge to work in, and we really appreciate the opportunity to work with CareWheels and for TAO for organizing this. So we're gonna look at CareWheels CareBank app version 2.0. This is the agenda we're gonna go through. And so we'll start by kicking off our team. So we are the super awesome care wheelers. We just met on last Saturday. We were randomly assigned. And here with us are Ellen Comber, who worked on the prototype, Cody Brown, our software developer, Lee Coates, our software engineer and data analyst, and myself, Eduardo Beltran, project manager. So first, let's have a look at what's the problem. So loneliness and medication non-adherence among seniors are public health concerns. With COVID-19, the situation has just worsened enough, and especially for Black, Indigenous, people of color, and people with disabilities. These populations will need to stay at home for the duration of the pandemic. We are talking about around 50 million people who are age 65 years or older, and 2 out of 3 of them live alone. When we add the digital divide, that prevents elders from benefiting from current technology, then this makes it a bigger problem. The causes for this divide include fear of learning, difficulty to use, or lack of interest. Fortunately, there are organizations like CareWheels who have recognized this problem, and they are actually tackling it. With their CareBank app, CareWheels allows seniors to care for each other, socialize, and accumulate CareBank credit, which they can exchange for services all within the comfort of their home. So through telecare and time bank, elders can safely age in place and they're valued as assets for society.
So how this whole system works is there are multiple Bluetooth sensors on health hotspots, like your refrigerator doors, medicine containers, those types of things. They sense things like position, vibration, and those sensors communicate with a Bluetooth relay nightlight, which we got for us, and it saves all of that communicational data. The challenge for us was to connect the Bluetooth relay to an app, which we were to create, gather data from the relay, and then send that data to a server. Ellen's going to run us through a prototype we came up with.
Cody, so for this design prototype development, we decided to focus on 3 design principles. First, a minimalistic design with memorable UI patterns and minimum steps, making navigation easy for seniors with cognitive difficulties. Second, apply inclusive design thinking to ensure that this app is universally usable and scalable, capable of supporting diverse audience of different culture, race, and with disabilities. And third, all design elements, including fonts, color, and spacings, are incorporated with optimal visibility and usability in consideration of those with vision and mobility limitations. So now let's do a quick walkthrough of the prototype, design prototype. So the current Care Bank Group app has a few existing functionalities. So for this prototype, we updated the user interface and added the what we call the Care Monitor functionality, which is directly accessible from the drop-down menu. And for this walkthrough, Maria is our hero persona. So Maria is the first-time user of the Care Monitor functionalities. After selecting Care Monitor in the drop-down menu, the app prompts Maria to choose a language within the app without leaving the installation process. So she's gonna go ahead and choose English. And next, Maria simply goes through a 3-step setup process. First, check for Bluetooth connectivities. Next, scan for the plugin. And lastly, allow the phone to pair with the plugin and run setup automatically in the background. Once complete, Maria will see the Care Monitor page. Within this page, there are 2 functionalities or 2 buttons, one for sensors, one for activities. The sensor tab displays sensor status and simple action requests, such as plugin needs to be securely inserted into the socket, or sensors needs battery replacements. And there we go. And under the activity tab, it displays 3 types of user activity feeds: meal, medicine intakes, and user presence. It also displays sensor response, detail response. So every time when the sensor ping, it gets uploaded into the server and gets bring it back into the app. That shows how many times the sensor has been pinged. So if you go back to the top, the calendar scrolls allows Maria to check her past activities. So you could easily remind herself that, oh, she did not miss her medicine yesterday. Now, for Maria to go back to her care group, she simply go to menu and click Care Bank Group Dashboard. Now you can see that each group member has a status color code around their photos. Gray means that Bill is not present. Red means that there's an alert. It alerts the care group members to possibly check on Jim. And to do so, Maria simply tap on Jim's photo to access his activity feed. It looks like Jim has missed his lunch, breakfast and lunch medicine, and he also missed his lunch. Maria can scroll down to the bottom to verify that Jim is present in the house, because the dashboard shows that he's only away at 7 a.m. but it's currently connected, but for some reason he hasn't, the sensor hasn't shown any data on his lunch and his medicine. So maybe Maria should get Jim a call. So what Maria is doing here, monitoring Jim's activity, provide follow-up calls. All these activities help her earn care dollars that she could use in exchange for services that's offered by Care Group. So now I'm going to hand it over to Lise to go through and do a walkthrough on the technical work that we've done so far.
Great. Thanks for showing off the vision and that awesome prototype, Ellen. Let me transition to talking about the architecture behind the app. So starting out, we thought, how can we provide the most utility to Care Wheels? And we knew we wanted to build something they could use right away. So we learned about the existing code base, and we discovered that the Care Wheels app was built in Ionic, a cross-platform app development framework. We decided to move forward with that so that way our work can be readily integrated into the next version of the Care Wheels app. One other thing that we liked about this solution is that it's an open source platform, which will allow Care Wheels to use our services immediately on a platform like GitHub, and will also remove the scaling barriers that they currently face with the hardware-heavy Samsung system. The open source solution also makes this functionality available to others who might need it. We've made this commitment to the open source pillars of equity and transparency, as they're both critical components of bridging the digital divide. On a final note, this Ionic app leverages Angular, TypeScript, and syntactically awesome style sheets, and will be published through Google Play and the Apple App Store, which is currently pending review in Play and will take longer for iOS. So to talk a little bit more about the technical process, I'll refer you to the diagram on this page. Bluetooth Low Energy, also referred to as BLE, offers several intriguing technical considerations. Not only did our team have to understand device communications and discuss privacy policies, but we also had to get into the weeds with something as simple as time management on the relays. For example, the relay timer starts when you power it on. So when you try to read data off of that timer, off of that relay, you have to apply a time shift just so you know when things actually happened in the current day. And once you have this connection made and the data is flowing, the app communicates with the plugin relays using bits and bytes, which are more compactly spoken using hexadecimal. You can see a hexadecimal message on the screen here. These bytes are interpreted as signals that can be used to generate alerts based on anomalous behaviors, such as missing medications. This goes back into the app and provides a simple, seamless interface for those in need of the information that can help them and their peer groups most. So since we need the phone's Bluetooth to show off the real connections to the relay, and we haven't gotten the app through the app stores, instead I'm going to show off a desktop demo of the dev environment and the app, the simple back-end services being run in the browser. So I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen now. Okay, great. So over here on the right in the browser is the app, and so I'll just kick that off as we go over here. And this is, just very bare bones back-end service. Of course, the prototype has a lot better of the visual envisioning of what the app will do. But as we kick off the process here, I'll let this run, and I'll just also go over some of the things that I mentioned in the architecture pieces. So I'm personally using Visual Studio Code for my IDE, and you can see I have the Ionic project set up over here, written in Angular and TypeScript. And it's running on a node server here that Angular and Ionic are using. And of course, using the syntactically awesome style sheets right here. So that's all we have to show right now. We'd love to be able to show you a demo from the App Store, but this is the most we can do at this time. But to hand it to talk more about the testing process that we had and the impact we tried to make, I'd like to hand it back over now to Cody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lee. Very exciting stuff. So testing for this was obviously a challenge. We couldn't really dive into the testing side of things until our app was making the initial connection with the relay. So we tested the relay. We looked for functionality for it to make sure it was going to work, and also so we could get acquainted with the hexadecimal communication that it was going to provide back for us. In working with this team, Care Wheels, and the sprinters, we know the value of having a system like this. One that during a global pandemic, when avoiding contact with your loved ones is a matter of life and death, something like this will help us all shelter in place. The system doesn't care about your race, your wealth, your status, but about your health and your future. But after a week of hard work, after everything that we did, we never got the Bluetooth to actually connect. So Eduardo, what are our next steps?
Sure. So we see Care Wheel to be to continue with this project. The next steps are to do the full Bluetooth testing and send the data to the Care Bank server. Then the actual user interface testing with real users would take place, and in order to update the development. Finally, once this is done and the app will be functioning, this can be scaled up to help seniors locally, nationally, and globally. We discussed internally what we learned during this week's sprint, and what we most learned was that frequent communication within the team was critical. We always try to be aligning what we were working on. It was a very, very short period of time. Nevertheless, we didn't duplicate efforts. We always aim to a direction where we could do effective work. We also found that the BLE technology is critical for the care bank solution, and will actually has a very big potential to bridge the digital divide gap for the elderly, and especially for COVID-19 impacted populations. So we thank you for being here with us, and we are happy to take any questions.
I have to say, y'all did an excellent, excellent job, in my opinion, with multiple languages, ability, and taking age into consideration, which is, I know, part of what this challenge was, but this is super awesome. Judges, I'm going to quit heaping on praise and give it over to you to ask some questions. Do we still have our judges?
Well, I'm still here. If there aren't any questions, I would like to make a couple of statements, if I may. This is Claude.
Claude, go ahead. I've got two quick questions, but go ahead, please.
Well, Sandy, please ask your questions first.
Thank you. So, folks, let me see. Lee, Eduardo, was that Erica?
Ellen.
Ellen, sorry about that. Yeah, really nice job. Sounds like you guys just met last week. Curious, how did you come to consensus on these topics? How are you communicating? Just like the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, okay, I'll try to tackle that question. Yeah, so it was interesting. Actually, the kickoff for the sprint was on Thursday, and Friday I just hopped into the eMobilize platform that Yale made available to us, and I saw that someone kicked off the conversation, and that was just the initial spark we needed. And just based on that, we started to get all the details that we needed, like what was why we hopped on into the challenge, what was our availability, what we were aiming to achieve, what were the most crucial steps. And yeah, I mean, it took some initial conversation to get these important things, like what was when could we convene every day, or if we should do it every day or twice a day. So once we had that, we figured out the most important thing was to talk to our users, which in this case was Mark Leavitt from CareWheel. And so the next day we started talking with them, and they explained to us what was their challenge. So I'm very glad. I think we teamed up very nicely, and I don't know if you guys want to add up something.
We were on Slack, Zoom, Google Hangouts. Mark and Claude were 100% always available 100% of the time. There was a bit of a handoff of a relay that we kind of ran a relay to get the relay, which was really cool because a couple of us needed it for development. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice work, guys.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Erica, go ahead, please. Yes.
Oh, I was going to also mention that Cloud and Mark gave us a really good vision of what they would like this app to, this and the importance of this Bluetooth relay. So we have a very good framework, and I appreciate that we have a very targeted focus, so that we can, within the short amount of time, we were able to really kind of wrap our heads around and dive in as much as we can to get a prototype and try to get the back end going. So appreciate that.
Yeah, I think the only thing to consider this would be for any senior application is simplicity and the UI UX, because if that's not the case, this is going to sit on a shelf that the daughter or the granddaughter will be calling, or the grandson will be calling and saying, "Ma, did you use it? Grandma, did you use it? Oh yeah, I'm going to do that." That's the end of it. That'll be the challenge for the team to continue to think about. But really nice work, guys. Well done.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, team. I'm overwhelmed by how you've embraced both the technological and the social dimensions of this challenge with a really elegant solution. And Sandy, you're absolutely right. Simplicity is key. It needs to be intuitive. And I think that the team has embraced all of those values. So I just want to stress that the COVID crisis has revealed profound needs for care and connection without contagion. And we're now living on the cusp of a national COVID spike. Epidemiologists project a roller coaster of continuing COVID spikes for the next 2 years. How will our most vulnerable elders and BIPOC people survive this pandemic's health and financial crises? Well, the Care Bank provides a solution that empowers us to take better care of ourselves by taking good care of each other. Now, with this pandemic, we see that senior living residencies, from assisted living to nursing homes, are the most dangerous places for elders to be living. Cruise ships and senior residents are COVID hotspots. This pandemic is crashing these industries. An Oregonian, Karen Brown Wilson, pioneered assisted living and spawned a $30 billion industry. The Care Bank provides a timely alternative to help Oregon launch a new tech-empowered independent living industry. I thank you all and look forward to working with our Care Wheel Sprint team, Age Friendly Portland, and Smart City PDX to deploy the Care Bank with underserved communities and address COVID risk disparities. Now, with historical disparities heightened by this pandemic crisis, we can clearly see what's broken and embrace this opportunity to build new relationships grounded on mutual trust and interdependence. Thank you all so much for this.
Claude, thank you. And everybody that's still sticking around. I mean, I think we've lost a total of 9 people and are a little bit past. So I'm just going to wrap it up with a big wow and a thank you so much to our design teams, our challengers, and our judges for all their time this week. Sandy, you get a shout out for bringing some additional students who then provided perspective in this iterative process of community design and development that we're doing. And I'm just going to quickly recap a couple of things that I heard in terms of next steps. Each challenge has some slightly different outcomes. So the statewide data hub, there's opportunities to move forward through a pending grant application, existing statewide infrastructure and data sets, and support through various private companies. As we saw with Eric Miller and the Squishy Media team, they said it best when they said we really need a clearly documented and shared frame of reference for this effort. That includes defining the problem, listing off the key stakeholders and stakeholder groups, conducting interviews, building personas and user stories, identifying problems and risks, and projecting a timeline. The state already has some tooling in place that might be good enough for now on the tech end. It's really more about getting everyone to pull together. And we have an opportunity through TAO and our partnerships to do that. For the Safe Places for Youth app, the new Avenues for Youth team will be able to take these proposed solutions and apply for funding while the safe places are being identified, a process that's underway that will take 6 to 12 months. And ideally, everyone that worked on that will continue to provide some support as the app is rolled out simultaneously with the actual physical location network. And then for Care Wheels app, I love that Claude was so impassioned. He really cares about this, and we all should be caring about this, particularly with a coronavirus high in the US yesterday in terms of cases. But this new functionality can be incorporated into the existing app for greater adoption during a time when social distancing will remain critical to safety for a lot of people in America and beyond. So the opportunity here is to use the solution to apply for additional funding to bring the application to life. And with all the challenges, each organization can continue collaborating with the Design Sprint team on their own, or ask the Design Sprint team if they're comfortable handing over the work that they've done. And with that, the Techlandia Design Sprint is over, and we cannot express enough gratitude for your involvement. It has been super inspiring to see so many technologists donating time and talent. I loved Team Alchemy saying that they basically have worked on this for a week, and I know a lot of you have, so thank you. But it's great to see that donation of time and talent for the greater good of our community. And I hope you all enjoyed this week-long process, met some new folks, learned a few things, and that you continue to engage with TAO. We will ask for your feedback and input via survey, so please share what you liked and where we can improve, and we will respond to all of that as best we can. And with that, it's a wrap. I'm going to end it with a stay well, everyone. And thanks so much. We'll be sharing these solutions tomorrow on the wrap up of our larger Techlandia summit. And we are very grateful for your work.
Likewise, gratitude. Thank you.
Nice work, guys.